What's up, everybody? Your cat daddy on the scene and ready to answer some questions for you this week. Now, that's what I do, right? I answer cat questions. I seem to do it a lot. This time around, I figured I'd start getting a little proactive. Don't wait for the questions to come around. I actually consulted the Google machine to figure out, what is being asked. And one of the top things being asked over and over again seems to be varying questions about cats and heat. What is the cat heat cycle? So I figured, let's just get on it. Before you guys ask me, I want some credit for being smart this time around. Not as smart as Google, but smart. So let's start with the very basics, which is, what is estrus or heat? Well, it is the normal cycle of reproduction in a female cat, which can start as early as 4 months old, although in personal experience, I did know a cat who was 14 and a half weeks old when they went into heat, and that will go on every 2 to 3 weeks until they either get pregnant or they get spayed. So that's the very basic, that's estrus, the natural cycle of reproduction. The estrus cycle can last anywhere between 2 and 19 days, but it usually settles in at about 6 days. Now, some interesting things about cats' heat cycle is, first of all, they are polyestrous, which is to say that they don't have a set time where they go into heat every year, like, for instance, dogs do. They will go into heat based on the amount of daylight there is and the climate, etc., which I'll get back to in a second. But that means that cats will go into heat a lot. Another thing about cat estrus is that they are induced ovulators. They ovulate usually because of external stimuli, which is usually sex. So if they have sex with a male cat, then they will more than likely ovulate then. So when you think about it, I mean, this is why there's so many cats out there, you guys. Not only are they polyestrous, go into heat every 2 to 3 weeks if they're not spayed or pregnant, but then they don't even drop those eggs until they have sex. They're just efficient when it comes to reproduction, and uber efficient, which is why we have the issue that we do in terms of too many cats. There is a correlation between the length of day and and cats going into heat. So that's why we call kitten season anywhere between March through October. We will see that more likely because the days are longer. And anytime there's daylight for 12 hours or longer, the chances of cats going into heat is much more regular. Then you also think about the temperate climates, because let's face it, if it's 40 degrees and sunny, a cat still might not want to go outside or get out of their nice little warm spot. But if it's warm 12 months out of the year, we are much more likely to see more cats going to heat, more kittens being born. So now let's start taking a look at what are the most common questions when I typed in cats in heat. And the first one that I'm seeing is, how do I know if my cat's in heat? My initial reaction is, oh man, you know when your cat's in heat. Let me just list some of the symptoms that you will definitely notice. The first one, and the one that you probably hear most often, is the vocalizing. This constant, low, but insistent and loud meowing that we hear at all hours of the day and night, and most commonly referred to as caterwauling. Man, like I said, there's no mistaking, at least where I'm concerned. I know the sound of caterwauling versus any other vocalization. And just by the way, if you wanted to know some of the other vocalizations cats have, check out this video over my head right here, and that includes caterwauling on there. But man, that is a symptom and a third, because it's just so unmistakable. The second symptom you would notice in conjunction with this is your cat's going to be kind of amorous. And that means with you as well. When I mean amorous, I mean just incredibly affectionate, like rubbing up against you and just being so much more loving than they normally are. And they'll roll on their back and they're like, oh my God. They are just clearly looking for love in all the wrong places, but they're just loving. And that's one of those things you're like, why is Misty so loving right now? And that, in conjunction with other things, is why she might actually be in heat. Another symptom that you might notice is that she's grooming her genitals for much longer. And also, of course, you might notice discharge, which is one of the reasons why they're grooming as well. The next thing, and of course this is what sends you guys scurrying back to the Google to find me, is urine marking. And we'll see urine marking, and yes, females can mark. And when I mean mark, I mean they're not just peeing on the floor, they're spraying up against surfaces, and usually you will see this around the windows and doors, because what are they trying to do? They're trying to attract mates. The caterwauling does this, and so does the urine marking. They are just letting any intact male in the general area code know that they're available and they're ready. Another symptom that you might notice is just body posture, the posture of trying to accept a mate, which is tail straight up in the air, and they'll go down low with their front paws. So it's just, that position. And they may even look like they're about to start making biscuits, doing that sort of smurgling thing, and you'll see that position a lot. And that's another way of knowing. Now, the final symptom is all based on the rest of these, because you're never going to see any of these in a vacuum, but you may start seeing your female cat trying desperately to escape the house. Another symptom that you might see in conjunction with things like trying to escape is if your cat lives in a multi-cat household and they're not spayed. I mean, why? But if that is the case in your house, then you might see a lot more fighting. And again, we think of these things really being something that males will do. Not so, because first of all, your female cat in heat is going to be driving everybody else crazy, not just the humans, but the cats as well. That whole just caged feel, that's going to set off some of the other animals in the house. And there are other reasons as well. But again, take that into consideration if all of a sudden there's a lot more discord in your multi-cat household than there was before. All of these things, because some of you guys will be like, well, my cat makes those noises all the time, but it doesn't mean she's in heat because she's spayed. I get it. As I've said many a time before, these are symptoms that when put together say, if your cat is not fixed, then your cat is most definitely in heat. So looking here at the Google, the next one I'm seeing is cats in heat painful. i.e., is it painful for my cat when she's in heat? And I think that that's a common question, because starting with the caterwauling, it does sound like your cat could be in pain. Now, it's impossible for us to say, is the cat in pain or is it not in pain? It's our perception of a cat's experience. But we can take our perception of a cat's experience so far and let you know that if they're going through this every couple of weeks, you got to figure, number one, it's tiring, and number two, it can't feel great, over and over and over again. It's probably uncomfortable, but there is no proof that there's pain involved. So the next question that I'm seeing here, and I see it in many different iterations, but I'm going to take the kindest one, which is how to stop a cat in heat from meowing. And some of the others are, how do I shut my cat up when they're in heat? Or, that kind of thing. The bottom line is you can't. You can't stop nature from doing what nature does. The only way to stop the caterwauling is for your cat to not be in heat in the first place. And the easiest way of doing that, of course, is to spay them. All right, so here's a question that's not necessarily about the heat cycle itself, but it is fascinating, and it does tell you more about the cat reproductive cycle. And the question is, and there are, of course, different ways of asking it here that come up, but can one litter of cats have multiple fathers? And the answer is absolutely yes. And this is where we get to put together all of the big words that we're learning, okay? So we know that cats are induced ovulators. So that is to say that ovulation is triggered by the act of sex, but that doesn't happen until about 20 to 30 hours after the act. And we know that cats in heat will seek out partners over and over and over and over again. The sexual act only takes about 2 minutes with cats. So in that 20 to 30 hours, they can actually go quite a few times. Once the ovulation is induced 20 to 30 hours later, there could be sperm from many different male cats in there. And then, yes, we can have kittens from multiple fathers, which is why you'll see litters with a black cat and an orange cat and a long-haired cat and a short-haired cat and a Siamese mixed in the middle of it. That's also because of what is called, now here's the best big word of the day, superfecundation. Ooh, big word. Would have aced my SATs with that one, huh? And superfecundation basically means what I've been saying. 2 or more eggs from the same heat cycle being fertilized by different sets of sperm. All right, so now we've answered some of the questions that we see about cat heat. Hopefully I've answered most of them for you. Now, I think that we get down to, again, one of the most common questions that I can wrap this all up into, which is, how do I stop cat heat? Well, there's an easy one for you. Spay your female cat. And of course, you should neuter your males as well, but really try to spay your female cat before that first heat cycle, because there's no use that can come of it and a lot of bad that can result in it. A study by Banfield Pet Hospitals on a database of 460,000 cats showed that spayed female cats will live 39% longer than female cats who are not spayed. Now, there are a multitude of reasons behind that. Intact females will tend to roam more. Indoor cats will want to get out there and mate, and they'll be hit by cars and all of the other things that want to happen with cats who live in the outdoor life. Also, there are complications in kitten birth that can also happen, that can take their life. And there's also, the more times they go through heat through their life, they are much more likely to get pyometra, which is a fatal uterine infection. It's terrible and it's an awful way to die, and it happens much more likely with cats who have had litters throughout their lives. There's also uterine cancer, mammary gland cancer, I mean all types of cancers which only happen in cats that have not been spayed. So that's where that number comes from. But all of that is to say that from a health perspective and from a quality of life perspective and from just a long life perspective, that spayed is the way. I'd love for you guys to also consider this final point, and that is the main reason why people like me shout from the hilltops that we should spay and neuter all of our cats, and we should do it as young as we possibly can before even the chance that they can reproduce at close to 4 months of age, is because we have too many cats. Because as I've been saying, cats are incredibly efficient at reproduction. And that's to say that the hundreds of thousands of cats and kittens that die every year in animal shelters, by and large, we can prevent a good majority of these if we just take up the charge, if we take the onus of spaying and neutering our cats and dogs. That's pretty much it. I do get the comment quite often that, well, of course I would spay my cat, but I don't have the money. I get that. Now, first of all, if you have adopted your kitten or your cat from any reputable shelter or rescue, that will come with spay and neuter and their first round of shots included. That almost always happens. But let's say that you just found a cat on the street and you want to do the right thing, you want to spay them. In most areas, there are low-cost options for spay and neuter. But if you just search around a little bit and you talk to the rescues and the feral cat advocacy groups in your area and the shelters in your area, if there's anyone there, they will point you in that direction. So don't use that on sort of a fallback and just say, well, I can't afford it. At this point in the game, in most places, there's a way to help you to afford it. So let's take that one out of play altogether. So those are the facts about cat reproduction cycles, being in heat, estrus, estrus, polyestrus, induced ovulation, superfecundation. I mean, we just covered the gamut today. I feel like I deserve a degree for today's video. And in essence, so do you. And that degree also says spay and neuter right now. Okay, you guys, until next time, keep the questions coming. And if you're not going to ask me, just keep Googling them and I'll find them at some point or another. Until next time, everybody, all light, all love, all mojo to you.
meow.